أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم نويت والتعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والرفائد والاستفادة والحث على تمسك كتاب الله وسنة الرسول والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلال على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه والثواب سبحانه وتعالى. Bring it all. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم العفو. Alhamdulillah, we're now entering into the last part of the month of Ramadan. So quickly, inshallah, I'll just read over some of the verses that we've covered. And today I've chosen to read the translation of the majestic Quran of Dr. Musharraf, just to give a different flavor of the translations that we have access to. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran khalaqa al-insana allamahu al-bayan. It is the Rahman who taught the beloved messenger the majestic Quran. He created human beings and taught them the art of communication. والشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان. The sun and the moon orbit in set paths. Plants and trees bow before him. He raised the sky and established the scales of justice, so don't disturb the scales of justice. Give due weight and measure. Don't shortchange one another. والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة ونخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. He created the earth for living creatures, supplying fruit and date trees with sheathed bunches, husked grains and fragrant flowers. So which favors of your Lord will you deny? He created human beings from oven-baked clay and created jinn from smokeless flame. So which of your favors of your Lord will you deny? Alhamdulillah. So we discussed yesterday mainly the concept of the jinn and the humankind and how the jinn and the humankind were created. And prior to that, we covered the previous verses. There was one word that I think I didn't give sufficient discussion about, which is the word Rayhan, which here in this translation he uses the word fragrant flowers, and we did talk about coming from rih, a sweet smell. However, Ibn Abbas says that wherever the word Rayhan is used in the Quran, it refers to rizq in a general sense. Now, rizq, for those that speak Malay, Bahasa, rizqi is a well-known word, means your provision, what Allah has provided you with. However, the word in English, provision, doesn't fully encapsulate what the word rizq implies. And one of the definitions of rizq is kulla ma yanfa'uka, everything which is beneficial to you. So, for example, you can say a child is my rizq, my work is my rizq, my air, the oxygen I breathe is my rizq. The money, which is the normal and this rizq provision, food, these are the things. Wherever the word rehan is used in the Quran, this word sweet smelling flower, it actually means rizq in a more general sense. So he talks about plants, flowers, he talks about trees, he talks about the stars, the moon, the sun. All of these created elements Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents to us as a reminder, and then he asks us, which of these favors do you deny? And as I said, he addresses directly to the humankind and to the jinn, and then he goes on to the next section. He explains clearly who the jinn are and who humankind are, so we can reflect on where we came from, so that we can try and understand who we are and where we're going, inshallah ta'ala. Then in the next few verses, which is the ones we were going to talk about today, he says, رب المشرقي رب المشرقين ورب المغربين. And now I'm going to concentrate on using the two translations which I have a stronger inclination towards. But one of them, as I mentioned, was the Dr. Muhammad Abdul Halim, quite a recent translation, and I just find it very simple and very accurate. And I know Dr. Muhammad Abdul Halim from SOAS in London, and his character is a wonderful, wonderful man. And the other is Yusuf Ali, who's another great scholar who passed away in London also. So the Yusuf Ali says, Rabb al-Mashriqaini wa Rabb al-Maghribain. He is the Lord of the two easts and the Lord of the two wests. And Dr. Muhammad Abdul Halim, he says, he is the Lord of the two risings and the Lord of the two settings. Now this is an interesting, there's an interesting difference between the two translations, because the word Maghrib and Mashriq have to be understood in their fuller sense for us to be able to get a grasp of what's being said in this verse, and also which of these translations is the closest to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended. So the word, as we mentioned, all Arabic words go back to 3 root letters, and if you understand what the root of the word is, then you can start to tease out how this word might be used in the Quran. And the word mashriq comes from sharraqa. Sharraqa means to rise. So we call the ishraq the rising, the time of the rising of the morning. So sunrise. Sunrise. And Maghrib is the time of the sun setting. It also, Idris, can you come here a second? Come here, please. This is not a planned prop. You can take your earphones out. Come here. I want you to model me for a minute. Come here. Cuddle. His t-shirt says Morocco, and then if you look in Arabic it says Al-Maghrib. Thank you. Off you go. I didn't plan that. But Al-Maghrib is the name of Morocco. Why is Morocco called the Maghrib? Because it's the land of the setting sun for Africa. So just to sidetrack slightly, is that Sayyidina Uqba ibn Nafi', one of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was given the bushra, the glad tidings, because he was recognized as being a great and brave fighter. And he said, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you would travel so far west there will be nobody to fight except you will drive into the Maghrib until you will go nowhere. There will be nobody to fight except the sea. And apparently he was part of the conquest of Egypt, and then he founded the town of Qayrawan, which is in Ifriqiya, to what is now modern Tunisia. And then he continued fighting until he got to what we call the Maghrib al-Aqsa, the furthest Maghrib, which is where the sun sets on Africa. So it's Morocco. So he got to the Morocco, and apparently he entered it after defeating the last tribe, the Berber tribe. He then entered into the sea and he started to strike the water. And he said, the Prophet ﷺ said, I would fight until I could go no further. And he reached what we call Maghrib al-Aqsa, the furthest Maghrib, the furthest Morocco. And then he returned back. And of course, Maghrib means the place where the sun sets. So here, when Yusuf Ali, he says the two sunsets, or the two east and the two west. The west is where the sun sets, the east is where the sun rises. So the two easts and the two wests are approximately, they're correct in terms of what the literal word of Maghrib and Mashriq means. So, but the word Mashriq means the place or the time of the rising, but it doesn't say what is rising. But it understood in the concept of Mashriq normally would be the rising of the sun, and the setting of normally would be the setting of the sun. So one of the understandings is, it says the two settings of the sun and the two settings of the sun and two risings of the sun, or the two east and the two wests. And that's why Dr. Muhammad Abdul Halim says he is the Lord of the two risings and the Lord of the two settings, and the two settings. So here he bases this on its literal linguistic meaning of the rising and the setting, but also there's lots of different interpretations of what is being referred to as being the setting and the rising, because it doesn't have to be the setting of the the sun and the setting of the sun, because we talk about the rising of the moon. We talk about the rising and the setting of the rays of the sun, what you call the shafaq, the aurora, and the northern lights for my brothers and sisters in Norway. This would be referred to as one of the things that they call mashraq al-kutubi, the northern lights. So he says the setting and the rising, the two settings, the two rising, are not necessarily. He doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be the sun, and and then the second question is, why are they two? The sun only sets in once, doesn't it? Right. Let's go to what the Tafsir says. The commentary says, "Ash-shams matla'un lish-shamsi." The sun matla'un fi shita wal maghrib fi shita, wal matla' fi sayf wal maghrib fi sayf. So we have the setting. We have two risings. One in the winter. We have the rising in the winter and the rising in the setting in the winter. We have the rising in the summer and the rising in the setting in the winter. Now, why is that significant? For people in the northern hemisphere like ourselves, it is important, and it's strange. And I'll just give you how it relates to the people on the equator. So, alhamdulillah, I've mentioned previously that alhamdulillah, my friends and family in East Africa, they set their times according to the setting of the sun, and this is Muslims and non-Muslims. So when they say Sa'am Morja, 1 o'clock, they don't mean 1 o'clock as in 1.00. What they mean is 1 hour after the sun has the dawn, 1 hour after dawn. So Sa'am Morja is roughly when the sun rises. So just before sunrise is Sa'am Morja, which would be, because they have such consistent times, would be 7 o'clock. So when they say Sa'am Morja, it means 1 o'clock. When they say I'll meet you at 1 o'clock, what they really mean is 7 o'clock in Western terms. And then 2 o'clock would be 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, till it gets to 12 o'clock, which would be when the sun sets, which is Maghrib. And that's okay for them, because when they say I'll meet you at Sa'am Morja, it means 1 hour after Maghrib or 1 hour after Fajr. And their time, this is Muslims and non-Muslims, are all in tune with the setting and rising of the sun. However, when I call people in the Maghrib, in East Africa, and they say, so what time is it there? They don't understand. I say, oh, it's now 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I've got 6 hours, 5 hours to go till Maghrib. I say, how can you have 5 hours to go till Maghrib? And then in the winter they phone and they say, what time is there? It's 5 o'clock. We're just about to pray Isha. And they can't visualize what it means to live in the northern hemispheres, because it's like a completely foreign world. However, for us, we have very, very, very different lives, so to speak, in terms of our prayer, our connection to the sun in the winter and in the summer. And that's very, very clear in the month of Ramadan, for example, because the days are just, alhamdulillah, getting shorter, slightly shorter now, but when it's those long days, it's just endless. And our times are very different. Why is there two? What's implied in this verse is that there are these two kind of time zones, or time attachments to the rising and the setting of the sun. There's times where I have to leave my house after praying Fajr, which in Scotland can be at 8 o'clock in the morning, because the Fajr doesn't actually come in until getting towards 7 o'clock, 7:30. It doesn't actually, there's no Fajr, the Fajr comes in that late, so you can't pray what we call the Ishraq, what we've just referred to, until you're on your way to work. So alhamdulillah, it's quite normal for me to pray Ishraq, the prayer after the sun has risen, as I'm driving to work. So this is the routine, the pattern of the winter for me, as I'm driving, literally crossing the M8 will be my time for the Ishraq. And before I get in, I will make sure I've got my sunglasses on. Why? Because the sun rising over the M8 is so bright in the winter that it's a very, very different experience to driving over the M8 in the summer. So what's meant by al-mashriqayn wal-maghribayn is these two times of the rising of the moon, rising of the sun in the winter, the rising of the sun in the summer, which is very, very different to us in the northern hemisphere. So far north up here in Scotland and in places like Norway and where other students are. So that's one of the meanings. Another of the potential meanings, as we said, it refers to rising and setting, but doesn't necessarily mean the sun and the moon. Some of the scholars have said mashriq al-najm wa mashriq al-shafaq. So what's meant by the two mashriqaini, the two risings, are the rising of the moon, the rising of the stars, and the rising of the, is twilight the right word for shafaq? That with the glow around the sun, the glow around the sun, the aura, or the twilight. So as the twilight rises, not the sun itself, but twilight is one of the things that is referred to here. And then the maghribaini is the setting of the sun, and then the setting of the shafaq, of the twilight beyond it. So that's what some of the commentators on this is saying, Rabb al-mashriqaini wa Rabb al-maghribaini, that there's 2 points to the maghrib. One is when it sets, the sun sets, and the other is when the sun's rays set, when the twilight disappears. And of course here in Scotland at the moment, and in Norway and other places, we don't have that shafaq, never disappears, which means we have to calculate when the Fajr comes in and when the Isha comes in, because technically there isn't any Isha, because the sun, the shafaq, the rays, the twilight never disappears in this summer period. Why am I stressing this? It's because it goes back to the verse that we talked about. Shams, sorry, my mind has gone blank for a second. Sorry. الشمس والقمر بحسبان. الشمس والقمر بحسبان. The shams, the moon, the sun, والقمر بحسبان. The sun and the moon go according to specific patterns which have been set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when the Ramadan is going to come, it's because of the alignment of the moon and the sun timetable, so to speak. So we will have very, very long days when Ramadan falls in the summer, and it will be very, very short days when it runs. And that's why he then goes on, Rabb al-mashriqaini wa Rabb al-maghribaini. So it's the same. Those very short days and those very long days, he's the Lord of both of them. So that's what's meant, implied in Rabb al-mashriqaini wa Rabb al-maghribaini. So that's one of the meanings, or several of the meanings I've tried to cover there. Then there is also, as I've said, some of the scholars look a little bit beyond that, and they see what is the lesson for me, not about creation, because there are signs, ayat, fil afaq, في أنفسكم وفي الآفاق, in ourselves and on the horizon. So the horizon is that which is out there, and what's inside us is also signs which the Quran relates to. So there is a setting of the sun and the rising of the sun within us, and there is a setting and a rising with. So what does this mean? And some of the scholars of the inward interpretations, they've said مشرق القلب ومغربه, the heart has a sunset and a sunrise. Likewise, the lisan, the tongue, has a rising and a setting. So the heart goes through phases and the tongue goes through phases. And what's Rabb al-mashriqaini wa Rabb al-maghribaini? He is the Lord of the heart as it rises and sets. He's the heart, is the Lord of the of your tongue, which you should then be able to get into to control, as the balance of the universe has just been described previously in the other verses. وَلَا تَطْغَوْا أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ. And so therefore don't overstep the boundary, because he is the Lord of the tongue and he is the Lord of the heart, and Allah knows best. So that's what some of the understandings of Rabb al-mashriqaini wa Rabb al-maghribaini might refer to. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then moves on, where he says maraj al-bahrayni yaltaqiyan. He has let free two bodies of flowing water meeting together. That's Yusuf Ali's translation. He released the two bodies, fresh and salt water, they meet. That's Dr. Muhammad Abdul Halim's. Let's go back to what we said yesterday, where we said marriage, the origin of the word marriage min nar, a mixture from the fire, comes from the word maraja, and that's then a close connection between what we discussed yesterday or the day before, and the word maraja in this verse. What does the origin of the word mean? It means to set a beast to pasture. So you have your animal and you just let him go free, or your animals, and you just let them go wild. Just let them roam anywhere they like. So your goats go, and your camels go, and your sheep go, and they all go their different way, and they all are left to maraja, to just to go their own way. So here, this is the origin of the word, and they mix, intermingle, they mix. And that's why when we use the word, the translation marijin yesterday, it meant that which is mixed. Here, it then refers to something slightly different, is that the waters are let free. The waters are let free. Maraja al-Bahraini. And he uses the word Bahar, and that's the next key word that we need to look at. So we've got Maraja al-Bahar, or Bahraini, the two Bahars. And what does Bahar mean? So let's go again to the origin of the word. Bahara means to cut something open, to cleave it, to open it up, to cut something open. So here, the Bahar is, in geographical terms, what we understand is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala curved out some of the earth so that it would flow with water, and it became a Bahar, an ocean, or a sea, or a massive river. So the word Bahar is a large expanse of water which has filled into a cleave, into a clearing or a cleavage or a split of the earth. So that's what the word means. So what's it referring to here when it says Maraj al-Bahraini? So when Dr. Yusuf Ali and others have said, and he let forth the two seas. That's actually a good translation, because the Bahraini literally means the two big expanses of water, meaning the two seas. However, the word Bahar is not just simply used literally to be this large, these seas, but when you say Huwa Bahrun, he is a Bahar. What it means here is somebody that overflows with something. Usually it means one of two things: either overflows with generosity. So when somebody says Huwa Bahar, the origin of this word actually would normally in the classical understanding be an extremely generous person. Well, now what we understood when we say Huwa Bahar, it mean he's in deep knowledge, he has deep knowledge, and the two are connected, because if somebody has true deep knowledge, then what they would do is they will be overflowing this knowledge, not necessarily always in teaching, but in their behavior, in their actions, in what they say, in what they do, in what they don't say, and what they don't do. So all of these things would be lessons, so they would become a bahar. Also, the word bahar is used as a big challenge. So something, and you would see that an ocean or a water or a river is itself a great bahar. And one of the most famous stories of Shaykh Abu Hassan al-Shadhili, the great Maghribi, going back to the word Maghrib again, Moroccan or scholar from that part of the world, actually born in Ifriqiya, which is the place that we mentioned earlier, which is now modern Tunisia, and then from that part of the world, the west. He travelled towards Hajj, and on the way he needed to cross the Nile, and there was no means to cross this water. So he slept and waited for the wind to come so that a boat would take him across. Anyway, the story is well known, but the point that I was trying to make was that he then, in his dream, he saw the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who relayed to him a supplication, a dua, which then became known as Hizb al-Bahr, the litany of the sea. But the sea that was being referred to as what technically is a river, but it's this massive expanse of water. However, the dua that we read when we read this Hizb al-Bahr is not to get us, literally to get us over the water, but to get us over the oceans of life, so to speak, or the challenges of life, or the Bahr that we are facing. And that's why in this litany it asks Allah, so, oh Allah, kama sakhart al-Bahr li Musa wa sakhart al-nar li Ibrahim, just as you've subjugated the sea to Moses, and you subjugated the fire to Ibrahim, and you subjugated the birds to David, etc., etc. Subjugate this big challenge that I'm facing to me. Make it easy. وَبَحْرَ الدُّنْيَا وَبَحْرَ الْآخِرَةِ. And this challenge, this bahr, this sea of this world and the sea of the next world. So the word bahr here has got lots and lots of much deeper meanings. Let's go back to the literal meaning. If it is meant to be sea, which, you know, alhamdulillah, the Quran is a bahr, is an ocean of meanings. One of them, the Qatada is one of the first generation after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he refers to this al-Bahraini that's mentioned in this verse are Bahr al-Rum wa Bahr al-Rum wa Bahr al-Faris. In other words, Bahr al-Rum is the Mediterranean, wa Bahr al-Faris is the Persian Gulf. And so Maraj al-Bahraini al-Taqiyan, the land between them is the place of where these two seas are, and that is the holy land of Syria, of Iraq, of Al-Hijaz. All of this is the holy land between al-Bahraini. Also, the word Bahr, as we just mentioned, is this enormous army, or it's also, when you say that a Bahr is coming, one of the references could be the army, or the power, or the legions. And when we say the Bahr of Faris and Bahr al-Rum, these are the two great powers of the time, the Persians and the Romans. So here, Maraj al-Bahraini, Qatada understands to be this reference. Others have said no, it means al-Bahr al-Sharqi wa Bahr al-Gharbi, the eastern and the western seas, or Bahr al-Maghrib wa Bahr al-Mashriq, which you'd understand because the verse that we've just read previously, Rabb al-Mashriqaini wa Rabb al-Maghribaini, the two easts and the two wests, or the two easts and the two wests. And some have understood this is where the two oceans meet, which for those with Cape Townian heritage will know it's Cape Point in South Africa. However, those people with with South American heritage will say no, that's actually not. It's the bottom of Argentina, where the two oceans, the Pacific and the Atlantic, meet. However, Maraj al-Bahraini could mean all of these things, and that's why it's such a deep meaning. Let's go to how Dr. Abdul Halim refers. He says the salt and the sea, and he puts these in brackets, fresh and salt water. And the reason why is because he takes it from the context and also the classical tafsir, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where the best tafsir is where Quran explains Quran. And there's a verse of Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Maraj al-Bahraini hada adbun furat wa hada milhun ujaj. The two seas were brought together. This one is sweet taste. This one is sweet tasting, and this one is salty. So here, the translation or the understanding is al-Bahrain is where the seawater meets the salt water. And in the context of this, Maraj al-Bahrain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends out the seawater, and He sends out the salt water. But between the salt water and the seawater is a barrier where the salt water remains salt water and the seawater remains seawater. Otherwise, there would be no such thing. There'd all be just one water. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed a barrier between them, and that's what the next verse goes on to say. But let's just reflect a little bit more on the word bahr first. Where do you come? We've just talked about the creation of humankind. One of the use of the word bahr is there's a word that's used in Arabic, bahr al-Rahim. The word Rahim comes from the word Rahman. The word Rahim comes from the word Rahman. Rahim is the womb. Rahman is the word that we started with in the verse. Ar-Rahman, allama al-Quran. Who is the Rahman? Ar-Rahman, and then he goes on to describe, and alhamdulillah, we talked at length. The whole of the first lesson was about what does the meaning of Ar-Rahman mean. Most gracious, most merciful, most compassionate, all of these words. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala named the womb specifically Ar-Rahim because he shaqqaqtu isman min ismi. I named it with a name from my own name. I named the womb Ar-Rahim from my own name, Ar-Rahman, so that you would respect the womb and you would respect the ties of the womb. So Bahr al-Rahim is the uterus. This is one of the Bahr al-Rahim. So here this again links back to what we've said previously, or the verse described خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ كَالْفَخَّارِ, that this is how Sayyidina Adam was created. And then you were created from the Rahim, from this womb. And that's why you need to respect the womb, and you need to respect the ties of the womb, which is why the blood ties, your brothers, your sisters, your mother, are the closest ties, because they come from this unique womb of your mother. They're connected to your mother. And then there's those which are a little more distant, which are your cousins, and these are connected to the womb of your grandmother. And then there's your tribe, which goes back to the womb of one of your ancestors. So these ties need to be respected because of the name Rahim. And that's one of the meanings of Bahr Rahim. Again, we mentioned there's the Bahr that is a massive entity or a massive challenge in your life. And Imam Abu Hassan al-Shadhili, he says, وَسَخِرِ لَنَا هَذَا بَحْرُ بَحْرُ الدُّنْيَا وَبَحْرُ الْآخِرَةِ, and the whole Bahr of this world and the Bahr of the Akhirah. And this is also understood, what the commentators on the Quran mean. Maraj al-Bahrayni is the bringing together of these two worlds, meaning the world of the dunya, the challenge of the dunya, and the challenges of the akhirah. Maraj al-Bahrayni yaltaqiyan. That's what, and then others say that the Bahr al-Sama' or Bahr al-Ard. And the last point I just mentioned, I'm going to read directly from a Tafsir, a commentary by one of the great esoteric scholars that I've mentioned previously, Abu Abdul-Rahman al-Sulami, which is he has a very beautiful commentary on the Quran, and I didn't manage to make notes on it, so I'm just going to read directly from what he says. قال السهل البحرين هما أوامر الخير وأوامر الشر. These are the what's meant by the Bahrain is the actions or the compulsions that you fall towards good and towards bad. وبينهما برزخ لا يبغيان, and between them is a barrier which you cannot transgress. And what's this barrier? Is هو الإسم والتوفيق. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you this tawfiq, this enabling success, it allows you to get this barrier between the good and the bad, between the right and the wrong. The Bahr, the Quran is a Bahr. Well, how did we describe our relationship with the Quran, especially in this month of Ramadan? Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. This is the month in which the Quran was revealed. Hudan linnas, a general guidance for everybody. وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِنَ الْهُدَى, and then clarification from that guidance for those who seek it, who believe in it and want to adopt. وَالْفُرْقَانِ, and the ability to differentiate between. So here Abu Abdul-Rahman al-Sulami describes the Bahrain as being the right and the wrong, and the Bahr and the blessing of the Quran and Allah's tawfiq, his enabling success towards us, is that barrier which stops the salt water and the, just as the salt water and the fresh water doesn't mix, we are saved by staying on one side and not yabghiyan, extending into the other and mixing with the awamir al-shar. وسمعت منصور بن عبد الله يقول سمعت أبو القاسم البزار يقول في قوله مرج البحرين يلتقيان قال بين العبد وبين الرب بحران عميقان أحدهما بحر النجاة وهو القرآن. So he says, he's quoting one of the earlier scholars. He says that between you and your Lord there is a barrier, and that's what's referred to in the next verse. What's this barrier between us? What's this connection? Is the ability to talk to the other side. What's the ability to talk directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This najat is this intimate discourse with him. And then what's interpreted, what does this intimate discourse mean? One is that you can speak from your heart, but also you can speak from the Quran. The najat, the discourse that you use with Allah subhanahu is the Quran, as we've just mentioned. Man ta'allaq bihi najah. Whoever holds firstly to this will be successful. لأن الله تعالى قال وَاتصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا, and Allah has said, hold fast to this rope together, and then it will protect you from the Bahr al-Halak, and it will prevent you from falling into that ocean of destruction, وَهُوَ الدُّنْيَا, and this is the temporal world which just wants to suck us into it and make us drown in this ocean. What will save us is this barzakh, la yabghiyan. This barrier, and that's the next part, the next word that he uses, the barzakh. And the barzakh is an interface between two things which touches one and touches the next. And when we use the word barzakh, it's the barzakh is that which is between this world and the next world, which is one of the meanings of the word barzakh. So, what do we mean by that? For example, alhamdulillah, rahmatullah alayhi, I mentioned my parents yesterday who passed away, and I said that my father's physical body was placed in the graveyard in Wilford Hill, as was my mother and my father's aunt, and was pointed out by Fahim and Fahim's sister that her father was also buried there, and several of my close friends, Ronak, and many of my close friends are all buried physically. Their physical bodies are there, but where are their spirits? Their spirits are in what we call the barzakh. The barzakh is between this world and the next world. It's not facing the akhirah. It's not reaching the Yawm al-Qiyamah and the heaven and all of that, but it's connected to it. And it's not left this world, and it's in a barzakh between the two, which touches both. And so we can still connect to the spirit of my father and all the people in the barzakh, and they can connect to us, which is why when we see them, we can see that our spirits see them, because our spirits, as we mentioned previously, are partly connected to this world, but are also connected to the hereafter, to the divine world, the unseen world. Which is why when we connect to the unseen, when we connect to higher spiritual realities, it's with our spirit, which is from the other worldly realm. And I remember when my teacher Abdul Rahman passed away, emotionally it was very overwhelming for me, and I was shaking, and it was something which was very difficult. I was in America at the time visiting. I was living in England, Scotland, but travelled to America. He passed away while I was there, and I remember somebody coming, taking my hand, rubbing my hand, and calming me. He says, "He's free now. He's free now, and he's more powerful than he's ever been, because he's all spirit," meaning that his body and his spirit is left into this barzakh, into this realm, So the word barzakh is that which touches both, but is part of neither. It's in the middle. So بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان, between the salt water and between the fresh water is a barrier which touches both, but is not part of. And this again, if you look at the scientific evidence of this, there's all kinds of interesting discussions, but in reality, it's what it means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala somehow placed this invisible, spiritual, so to speak, barrier between them that we don't fully understand. And that's what the verse is showing us. Maraj al-Bahrain yaltaqiyan baynahuma barzakhun la yabghiyan, la yabghiyan. They don't want to transgress. Baghya has two meanings. One is to want something. I remember one of the most common things I remember of local Hijazi dialect in Jeddah. You go into a shop and they go, "Ish tabghi?" What does he want? "Ish tabghi?" And the baghya it means something which you desire or you want. "Ish tabghi?" What do you want? Baghya means to desire or want something. So you have two sets of water: salt water, fresh water. The fresh water doesn't want to be salt water. The salt water doesn't want to be fresh. It doesn't want to. La yabghiyan. The other meaning of baghya means to transgress, to go over the limit. And that's why the translations are so interesting, because let's use Yusuf Ali's, between them is a barrier which they do not transgress. He takes that baghya, la yabghiyan, to imply the transgression. There's a very beautiful translation there. Whereas Dr. Muhammad Abdul Halim, he says, he released the two bodies of fresh water, fresh and salt water. They meet, yet there is a barrier between them. They do not cross. And he takes it that they don't overstep the limit, but he applies it in a much more gentle way than this concept of transgression. And I think inshallah, that perhaps that's I was planning to cover a few more verses, but perhaps that's sufficient, and maybe inshallah that's a good point to break. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq, give us this enabling success to understand what the meanings of the Quran are, to give us the enabling success to place a barrier, or where this enabling success is a barrier between us and what is wrong, and so that we stay on the side of the fresh water and not overstep, and that we understand that the rising and the setting of the sun has a symbolic meaning for us spiritually, and that we can connect our spirits to the creation, and how to understand the creation through our spirits rather, and through them to connect ultimately to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we can have this intimate spiritual discourse through the Quran, through our fast, through our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's expressed through prayer and other acts of worship. And we ask Allah to wipe out everything that we've done wrong and give us a fresh start to move forward, which is the meaning of the dua, Allahumma innaka afuwan tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna, which is a dua we should be doing during these nights. Allahumma innaka afuwan tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna, Allahumma innaka afuwan tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna, Allahumma innaka afuwan kareemun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna ya kareem. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas sami'ul alim wa tub alayna innaka antat tawwabur rahim. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى وصحبه وسلم فجزاكم الله خيرا. May Allah give you all peace and strength, inshallah, and we'll hopefully see you again. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you.